Okay, looks like 16 of us have been able to respond. Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and share what we have come up with. To our question, what word, phrase, or image comes to mind when you think about evaluation? All right, here we go. Co-creating a word cloud together. One of the large things that's standing out for us is analysis. That's something that comes to mind. Some other things that are jumping out to me are roadmap, reflection, how things are going. Great, thank you so much. I'm gonna go through what our agenda is for today as well. We're going to be talking about the evaluation pieces and introduce the approach for the evaluation and facilitation team. We've created some space for you to meet each other and to tell us more about what's important for us to know about you. We're going to have some discussion about affinity group topics. We'll have another small group discussion about those affinity group topics. And then we're going to close today and have a feedback survey. So I'm going to pass it on to Tahoot to talk about the evaluation and facilitation team approach.
Thank you, Sherry. So we wanted to kind of take a few moments to introduce you to us as an entity and explain ourselves. We are a multicultural, multiracial, multi-ethnic group, as you can see. And our style is a little bit different. The way we come to evaluation is a little bit different. And we thought it would be helpful to describe kind of our philosophy around this work. So I'm going to lead you through this doesn't hold everything about us, but it's a nice way to kind of tell you some of the core values that we hold as important to us in this work. And we're going to kind of go through each of these elements. But I just want to flag that at the core of it is health equity for us. I can, speak for myself as a Black immigrant who has been in the field of evaluation for a number of years. It doesn't feel like until recently that I've started finding my place in this field and finding a language and a way to bring in the other aspects of what I feel are important into the evaluation work that we do. And that's really, I think, something that you would find with each of us is that we come to it with our full lived experiences, the ways that those have shaped our understanding of the world. We come with our whole selves to the work. So if there's any preconceived notion that you may have that I would love to dispel, it's that we are humans and we have big personalities and we love the work that you're doing. And we're so excited to partner with you. So don't be afraid of us. I'm always struck when people do kind of have sometimes have kind of a fear reaction to the evaluator, but we're not that. We are your sisters in this work and really work hard to listen and to respond and to set a table that is inclusive of all of who you are. So I'm going to walk you through kind of our language and the way that we think about some of these things. At the very top is, I think Sherry alluded to it, that we really strive to use participatory approaches. I think evaluation at times has been hierarchical, has had a power dynamic that's present in the work. So we really don't come in as experts, poising ourselves to tell you what to do. We really believe in co-creations. We know some things, you know some things. What can we co-create together with that collective wisdom and expertise that we all bring to these conversations? And we really believe that the group holds the wisdom. So that's why we are, half evaluators and half facilitators, because we feel like the art of drawing out the group's wisdom is really important to the work of evaluation and to work in general. So we pay attention to ways of doing that. So that is the first thing that you should know about us. We really hold dear the principles of health equity. and we recognize that it really does take intentionality. I think we're living in a time now where equity is everywhere. The conversations about it are everywhere. But there's in a way that's good and it's welcomed and it's overdue, but there is sort of a discipline to it, and there is a bit of intentionality to it to give these proclamations feet. So we really do try to bring those practices as they are needed and useful to our partners to the table. I'm going to kick it over to Jennifer. She's going to finish the circle for us.
Thank you, Tahoot. Under demonstrate care, we want you to know that we really value the work that you do. You know, some of us do come from a direct service and policy background as well. We can recognize the toll it takes on giving of yourself, and the work of your organization is very, has a lot of output that's a part of it. And so we want to honor the work that you do. And so we try to invoke values around being practical. We're not here to try to just do some little academic exercises. We practice intentional learning and listening so that we can hear where you're coming from, and hopefully we can have our time together feel like it's meaningful, relevant, and hassle-free. We also encourage evaluation for learning. So we are encouraging collective learning. We're hopefully going to build a space for us to have the ability to learn more about our work together, and how evaluation can help enhance all it is that we do and all that you do. And for intentional design, we also have a deliberate intentionality for the work that we're doing together. And so though, like Tahoot eloquently said, you know things, we know things, we come together to co-create. So we're not really cookie cutter about how we do the evaluation work. It's not like, here's our dog and pony show about how you can plug into some already set agenda around evaluation. Our approach is to make sure that it's relevant to you, so we will customize. And we want you to have it feel as relevant as possible. And we also recognize that there might be some hard feelings about evaluation. And so our goal is to create something that you feel comfortable with in a journey, any kind of journey of evaluation. And we'll tell you a little bit more about what the Blue Cross Blue Shield evaluation journey looks like. So we're not auditors or compliance officers. We're not here to come in and count your widgets and see if you're performing in any particular way. As I mentioned, our value is evaluation for learning. So that means the foundation is on its own journey for evaluation, and we support them in that way. And there are times that we will pause and say, grantee partners, can you help us deepen our learning by telling us a little bit more about what it is you're doing and what it is you're seeing? So there will be those stopping points on the journey. But for the most part, our primary role is to be a resource to you. Oftentimes, there are other funders who maybe do approach evaluation from a little bit of a compliance point of view. We often have grantee partners who are getting state funds, and there's some evaluation plan that some state funder or some other funder is requiring, and they're like, they send up a flare and say, can you help us? And the answer is yes, we can absolutely help you. Sometimes people approach us because they want to ask particular questions for them. They want to make the work that they're doing more relevant. They want to hear from their stakeholders, and they also send up a flare asking for help. That is also okay. So think of us as your evaluation resource for the most part, and that is the role that we play for all grantee partners across the foundation. But as I mentioned, there will be some stopping points where we'll ask you to help us, help the foundation do some learning about what's going on in the Healthy Connections portfolio. So yes. So how do you send up a flare? How do you reach out to us for help and support? Fani is going to help coordinate some of our calendars. We have a fancy calendaring system that some of us are on and some of us are not on. So Fani will help coordinate that. So we'll put her email address here in the chat. And so, as I mentioned, the stopping points will be, you're in a 2-year grant cycle, there's an interim stopping point, and there will be a final stopping point. For sure, you'll hear from us then, but we love hearing from you. We love helping you go deeper, helping you answer your curiosities. And so at any point in time, you feel like you want some support with evaluation or just any other kind of thought partnership, just let us know and reach out. Thank you for that. So now I'm going to pass it to Sherry so that we can more deeply get to know each other.
Thank you, Tehoot, Jennifer. Just like Tehoot and Jennifer said, we want to hear from you and we do want to get to know what's important to you. So we're just going to do this 15-minute breakout, and each of the groups will have one of our team members. We're just going to introduce ourselves, learn about each other, and then we want to know more about what's important to know about you before we start our journey. We're going to spend a lot more time getting to know each other, but this is a great start. So we're just going to break out for 15 minutes, and then we'll come back.
It flew right by. It flew right by.
For saying that about stories. I really like that. Thank you.
Yeah. We had a rich conversation.
Yep. So it looks like we're all back. Thank you for taking that time, and it was great to get to know you a little bit better, and there'll be more of that to come. So Julie had a question about what's the difference between an evaluator and a facilitator on our team. And so Jennifer Tehoot, what do you think about that question?
I'll let Jennifer answer that one.
Yes, I straddle both worlds. I'm gonna hold back from waxing poetically. I'm also a storyteller in our group. But in any case, when I was early in my research career, this is sort of before I became an evaluator. I was a social scientist at one point. I worked for an organization who really wanted to hear from community, and we went out and we learned how to facilitate, and we came back and we could see the value of facilitation and things like our own internal, action planning, as well as the community-based research that we were so eager to try to do very well. And so in my mind, a good evaluator is also a good facilitator, because most of the times we're working with groups of people and various stakeholders who have different points of view and who have different experiences. And to have a worthwhile evaluation, all of those points of view need to be present in terms of deciding what's important to measure, what's important to hear stories about, what's important. And so in order to facilitate from all stakeholders, it's not just the funder's point of view that matters or the person commissioning the evaluation that matters. All stakeholders matter, at least in our values. And so in order for us to have all points of view, all voices raised to the top, that's a facilitation skill. So in working with other evaluators, we always emphasize facilitation training as a core part of making sure all voices have a place at the table. I don't know if that makes it the difference between, but it's a value, at least, that we have.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Who would add to that?
I think for me, so I went to school to be an evaluator, social scientist. So lots of coursework in survey methodology, a little bit of focus group stuff, but for the most part, you're trained to collect and manage data, which in theory makes sense. But what I found when I went out to do the work I wanted to do was there's humans involved. There's always humans involved. In all these projects, there's lots of humans involved, and they all have passion and they all have different opinions. And holding a space where that gets woven together really requires skill. And I don't know of any evaluation program that actually teaches evaluators to cultivate that skill. I think we're mostly trained to come in as the experts. We're going to go tell people. And we all know how well that's worked out. That doesn't work, right? So it was just, for me, a gap. You can have all the methodology that you want, but if you can't walk into a space with humans and help everybody kind of engage in a collaborative way, then it's for naught. So it's a gap, and it was one that I filled for myself, just because that's the kind of work I wanted to do. Was not that more the expert role, but more of, I'm coming to the table with everybody else. So how can we do something together without stepping over each other, diminishing other voices? So that's an entire discipline and a field, which is really what Jennifer and Sherry are expert in. How do you do that? It requires a lot of skill and a lot of a particular mindset. Did that answer the question? I don't know who had you said Julie? Okay, great.
Thumbs up. Thank you both. So I'm going to turn this over to Jennifer, who's going to talk about some of the work that we're going to do together.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, in your small groups just now, who talked at all about measurement? Did measurement come up at all? Or who talked about measurement? You can raise your hand, give a thumbs up. No measurement. Okay.
No, I can't see everybody, but we talked a bit about measuring. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, in the spirit of lifting a voice and working together in co-creation, one of the things that we've been hearing from Jill and from Claire and from others about the work of the Healthy Connections portfolio is that folks are deeply involved in community engagement and even potentially civic engagement. And the first question we had was, well, what does that mean to the group, do you think? And people started waxing poetically. And so one of the things that the foundation does like to see is some sort of metric across the whole portfolio that is a proxy or represents something that's important to the group. So in Healthy Start, we have some metrics about that. In the access to coverage, we have a few metrics that relate to that. And so one of the things we thought, well, with you all as a group is we love to spend some time learning from you about community engagement and civic engagement to see if by the time you're ready to start thinking about your interim documentation and your interim reporting, be able to tell us some things, all kind of using the same language a little bit about your community and civic engagement. And so we would love to convene a work group for the first quarter of the year. Maybe it would involve 2 or 3 meetings on Zoom like this, where we co-create together what does community and civic engagement mean to you? What does it look like when it's going really well? And what are some ways we could maybe document quantitatively and qualitatively exemplars of community and civic engagement? And so at the end of this meeting, there's going to be a little survey that we'll fill out together. And that's a time for you to say, I would love to be on that work group because I have strong opinions. Or you may not have strong opinions, but you still like to be on that journey. So we'll be asking for volunteers to sign up for the work group. And we'll probably meet sometime between January, February, and March, so that we'll get ready to then communicate to the rest of the group. This is what we've come up with when it comes to telling the foundation our story. and our progress around civic and community engagement. Stay tuned. Did I miss anything?
Nope, I think if you have any questions about any of this, feel free to interrupt or drop it in the chat. We're watching the chat as well. So many of you may already know, if you watched our little video that we sent out a few months ago to introduce ourselves, we talked in there about another big part of our work, which is creating these learning circles or learning opportunities within all of the work that the foundation is doing with partners. And we're doing that through affinity groups. And the way we think about these groups are simply that it's a group of people that have a shared goal, that they have shared aspirations, and they come together semi-regularly. So we're just thinking 4 meetings a year to collaborate, do thought partnerships, share resources. And we've been doing that in the Healthy Start portfolio, and people have liked those opportunities, especially now that we are isolated and we can't gather in person, to just check in on topics that are really important to you. Our room actually talked a bit about one of the affinity groups that some of you may have come to, which is one dedicated to holistic organizations. So the group should have some kind of, defined area that it wants to explore. And in this case, it's holistic organizations. So organizations that are tending to whole communities, whole people, not just the one area that maybe you've got funding for, not just employment if you have workforce dollars, but also childcare and also all the other things that we need as humans to thrive. Those types of organizations share particular challenges and have particular assets and wrestle with particular problems. So this group is really for those organizations to come and share ideas. So we've had things like an evaluation framework session where we shared a framework that we created with Centro Tyrone Guzman for their work, because they're a very holistic organization. We've had David Nichols come to talk to us about the environment that we holistic organizations are finding themselves in and what's coming, and his reflections on what's needed. So we do different things, but they're all in service to one big idea, which in this case was holistic organization. So our hope is to have you tell us and carve out the topics, the big ideas that you all want to explore that are really closely tethered to the work that you do. So that's what we're going to move into for the rest of our time together, is really an exploration of what are the big ideas, the big topics that you would love some dedicated space and support to kind of unpack and work on. So Jennifer will walk us through some proposed areas of work next.
Great. So a couple of years ago, our team worked with the foundation with each of their portfolios to talk to folks who are doing the work in the field. We called them experts, but they were maybe thought leaders in the field. There's literature written about how do we create change and impact, and Healthy Connections is a sort of a defined batch of work in the world, definitely within public health, but we see it in social work and we see it in other social sciences as well. And so we were on this journey to articulate, well, what are the strategies that are used in the field to build healthy connections? And so after, this series of conversations and readings, 8 categories emerged, and we recognized these categories might be a little jargony, and that's not meant to be the case. But we thought this could be a starting point to say, we know that you've been working with some of these ideas a little bit. I know with Claire, perhaps over the years, or even your wilder compatriots, to articulate the strategies that you engage in order to build community, to promote healthy connections, and to also uphold racial justice and racial and health equity. And so we thought we would start by saying, remember these, or maybe you've seen these. Would any of these be something worthy of an affinity group? An affinity group meets maybe quarterly for a couple hours. And if these are not the things, then by all means, we would love to hear from you. What are the things? What are the things that would be worthy of your time and your experience, and that you'd want to share in peer connection with others and others about over the next year? So our first one has to do with policy. We're calling it economic, legal, criminal, and social policy. But for those of you who are interested in policy, we could have a group talk about policy, ways people are engaging in strategies for policy change, as well as we come in there with our little evaluator. This is how people are evaluating policy these days. We also have access to social support. So we're calling it strengthen access to economic, legal, and social supports, but ultimately it's about access. Those of you who might be challenged or have some great ideas about access to social supports, that would be a type of group that could come together. We also have creating protective environments. This could be thought of from this kind of prevention mindset. How do we create happy, healthy, whole communities where trauma doesn't exist? Or how do we repair our communities once trauma has occurred? So those of you who are really interested in these protective environments or whole, healthy, happy environments, that might be a group that could come together about this. Supporting constituent or community-led efforts. Those of you who are really interested in community engagement, have some challenges or have some brilliant ideas, so that could be a learning community for you. We hear a lot of you are working on nurturing community leaders. This could be formal or informal ways in which we uphold or help people step into leadership roles. Perhaps that would be a group that you'd be interested in getting together with. I know many of you are also working on trying to lessen harm caused by violence and oppression. So for those of you who feel like you want to work more deeply or connect more deeply with peers about ways to lessen harm strategies, approaches, that could also be a group that would get together. Promoting connectedness and belonging. We know some of you are doing a lot of welcoming kinds of things. Some of you are working across communities. Some of you are going deep within communities. So if that's a topic or a set of strategies you're interested in deepening, promoting connectedness, belonging within and across, perhaps that would be a group for you. Changing narratives. We know many of you are thinking about what are the primary narratives that are causing harm in our world, and how can we promote messages that are more positive for all of us. So that's a deliberate set of work that you'd be interested in perhaps having a group share about. And then improving community conditions. This is the civic engagement again. This is this community engagement. We have a task force or a work group that we're going to do measurement around, but it could actually be an affinity group that continues on, where you have a learning community that continues to go deeper. So yes, so I'm seeing our work intersects with all of these named options. Is there a possibility to have more than one? Yes, actually, we were thinking that there could be 2 or 3 that would be going at any given time. We're thinking the holistic one that already exists, which is open to any organization as a part of the foundation. These would be specifically more for you unless you wanted to open it up to others. But yes, we could have up to 3 going next year. So you don't have to just pick one, if you will. Again, meeting quarterly, we try to stagger the months a little bit. So there's kind of maybe 1 a month, but they're different topics. So we just kind of can see what your interest turns out to be and adjust accordingly. We probably couldn't support 5, but yeah, we're thinking about 3. What other questions do you have about these potential topics? And we have room for others. If these aren't exactly right, by all means, you get to we're going to have a small group time where you get to tinker or add. I see an overlap between creating protective environments and lessening harms and oppression. Yes, I feel like that might have come up even in our own team. In the world that this comes from, some are thinking about before harm happens, creating protective environments, lessening harms once it happens. It could be a false dichotomy. By all means, put them together in your small group if you think that they don't need to be separate. And any one of these could be, you could say, merge these two together and call it this, and that's the group I want to be a part of. So, but don't feel locked into, this is just a starting point for you to be thinking about. If I wanted to be on a journey with a group of people from this portfolio, what would be the topics that would make me most excited? So that's really what we're after today. Any other questions? Because you'll get about a half hour to kind of work on these in a small group in a few minutes. What resources? Yes, so our team has been putting these together. So, if, Fani, Sherry, even Allison, if she's willing to continue on a little bit, but perhaps she has more. She should go. As we get our production staff more in place, we might not involve Allison as much, but Allison is more than welcome to help come up. So our group of 5 or 6, Gil might get in there too a little bit. All of us have been showing up and putting the learning journey together. We do this kind of series of, at the end of sessions, we'll do a little poll. Sometimes we'll do some sort of surveys. We're like, you want a speaker next time? Do you want to planning work next time? So we try to have it be as responsive and interactive as possible and then in co-creating together. We're like, I want to hear a speaker talk about self-care. Well, for the next holistic one, we're having a speaker come to talk about self-care. So we try to populate it with the people you want to hear from. We just try to facilitate it, make it an interactive. We do rely on you to help guide it, show up and participate. And sometimes I know our speakers charge a fee, so we get the foundation to pay for that too. So in any case, those are what else, team, about resources for the affinity groups would you mention?
Yeah, I think you got it, all the main points. We try to make it interactive. We try to, we don't want you to be bored or be in pain. So we try to break it up. We try to come up with a resource you can take home with you after the conversation. So it's a guided experience with lots of room to riff with your colleagues. So you won't have to come into the room expecting that you have to hold the experience. We'll have all of that, the table set for you. We try to come up with poignant questions and experiences that really help you go deep on that topic. So you would just show up and participate, like Jennifer said.
And they've been optional. They've been optional for people to engage in too.
Yes,
so it's not
absolutely
like,
optional.
yeah.
Yes.
This is more for you as opposed to being done to you. So. Any other questions?
There was one other question, Jennifer. Where would gender-based violence fall? Did you see that one?
Yes. Okay. So in thinking about topics, like whether it's racial justice, gender-based violence, I feel like these are maybe issue agnostic strategies. So if you have specific topics like gender-based violence, I'm trying to think of immigrant services or immigrant rights, or there's specific topics. Flag that in your small groups and say, I love using all of these strategies, but I want to talk to people about this topic, whether it's a policy strategy for this topic or a lessening harms, that sort of thing. So I would say this was meant to be, since many of you work on lots of different things, but there are some pockets, right? There are some pockets of you who are specifically working on topics. If you have a desire for that, flag that for for us, for yourselves in the small groups, and we'll see if there's a critical mass. And if there's not, still flag it for us because we want to make sure you get plugged into something if you're looking for it. We don't have to have only democracy ruling in our activities here, so we can still figure out ways to support you on that kind of a journey. Is that clear? Okay, I'm going to pass it to Sherry.
Great. Thank you. So we're going to jump into another small group conversation. This will be about 30 minutes, and we're going to talk about the strategies. And then just, I wanted to repeat that this is, Jennifer said, where this is done for you, not to you. So this is an opportunity for you to help us shape the experiences that you're going to have. So we're presenting these strategies as well. Here's an idea that seems to resonate. This might be the right direction to go in, but this is an opportunity for you guys to talk together and fine tune that. And you're going to, in the last session, we were there with you, but now you're going to facilitate the conversation yourself. If you see new faces in your group, please introduce yourselves. Some other folks may have joined in the meantime. And you're going to assign a facilitator in your group. And we've prepared a worksheet for you, and we're going to put a link to the Google file so you can retrieve the worksheet. And it's named Small Group Conversation in the file name. So you'll go and grab that file, and we have 6 questions. It's a conversation that we've created for you really intentionally to help guide the group through this process. So you'll have the 6 questions, and the facilitator is going to guide the group through those questions. And I'm going to ask the facilitator for the first question. It would be great to get all the voices in the room. And for all the participants, if you're a person who always shares, maybe this is an opportunity for more listening. And if you're a person that always listens, maybe it's an opportunity to do more sharing. So just keep that in mind. And then, so the facilitator will have a job. You'll also select a reporter. The reporter's job is to bring back to this group for a large group report out the answer to question number 6 on the list. We're asking you to kind of think like, what are the 3 things that you would want to bring back to the group as an idea to move forward for affinity group topics. And in the file, it's a fillable PDF, so you can just type it right into the document. And I'm going to ask you to copy that information, paste it in the chat when you come back. And that way I'll know who's going to be the reporter for each group. And you'll have an opportunity to speak to the group about what your group came up with. And then we'll debrief a little bit on what we're seeing for each one of our groups. Did I miss anything, team? Nope, great. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome. I hope you had a great conversation. We were talking about how we're curious about what you'll come back with. So we want to do just maybe a 15-minute report out, and then we'll close our session for the day as closing comments. So if the reporters can put your group's results into the chat, and then I'll just call on you so that you can share what your group was thinking about for the strategies in terms of, if they're the last question, which the last question is, if we had a learning community on any of these strategies in the image, what would your group's top 3 choices be? And that, of course, can include things that you modified or things that you wanted to add to the equation. So we're going to spend some time just debriefing on that last question. I see we have some things in the chat. Group 4. Let's get a report out from group 4.
I have to leave, but we had, I can't, are you reporting?
Yeah,
for us?
I'm here. I
Thanks.
had to figure out if we were group 4. Sorry,
Oh.
I wasn't sure. Yeah, so it was a little difficult for us as a group to choose a top 3 on question number 6, because we felt like our work is actually represented in all areas. So we don't know if we should stick to those that more directly relate to our work, or step out of like a comfort zone and learn and have conversations about something new. However, some that were really jumping at us were the cultivating community leaders, the strengthening access to economic, legal, and social support, and policy as well. In terms of the other questions, we didn't go exactly question 1, 2, 3, 4, but what I could share is that overall, we really want the conversations to be worth the time and not to be preaching to the choir. So the question is, how do we make them more open instead of narrow so that we don't end up with the same people we're always talking to about the same issues, but actually bringing those that are not at the table to the table to have the conversation. And there was an idea and an example chair.
Oh, you're muted. Oh, you're muted still.
It's my notebook, sorry. There was an
Okay.
example chair on a session that was presented to Blue Cross Blue Shield staff on Asian hate by an organization that is in this call today that included overall folks from Blue Cross Blue Shield. So there was the example of that. How can we do more of that and not just meet with folks from the foundation and the evaluators, but others that are normally not part of these conversations. And then the cultivating and nurturing community leaders was highlighted as how can we include conversations about fundraising and community-centric fundraising and capacity building for the organizations. There was the mention of youth. There isn't necessarily anything specific to youth, and youth usually tend to be an afterthought. So how is there something specifically for youth, created for them, conversations about them, and not just like an add-on? And then there was the example of in indigenous communities, native communities, there is a learning of, learning from elders and nurturing youth leadership. And then on the reducing harm caused by violence and oppression, there was a different take on it, and it was rather than emphasizing on the community is how do we emphasize it on nonprofits? So how do we reduce the harm caused to nonprofit and leaders of color because of oppression and violence, and the reality that burnt out is real, but through COVID is exacerbated and many other things that have happened. So how can that be applied to the nonprofits itself and the leaders within nonprofits along and the community, but emphasize on that. I think that's everything. Does anybody else from my team has something else to add, or did I miss something?
Thank you. It sounds like you covered it for them. Thank you
Okay.
and your team for all their thoughts as well. Let's see, Feng, do you want to tell us about the top 3 things for your group?
Yes, and it's Peng, no H.
Peng,
English
thank you so
screws
much.
our names up so much that
Yes.
I don't expect anybody to get it right off.
Thank you for correcting me on that.
No worries. So our group, I learned, is group 2, sorry. And we were talking about the 2 areas, or we came up with 3 areas, and then strengthening access to economic, legal support, and social supports, and that the image should be changed so that it isn't about chains, because that triggers something different in folks' minds. So we would recommend changing the icon to something different. And then our group was talking towards the end here about how we can merge the areas of improving community conditions through collective action and promote connectedness and belonging into like a big header overarching that can encompass all the other areas that are on that sheet. And then we were also thinking about how do we, if we were talking about what would excite us, it's about nurturing community leaders, and how do we make sure that that is threaded into the affinity groups and the activities. And then also, how do we also provide and create spaces within this group of folks through our partnerships with and amongst each other, meaning with Blue Cross, to support our own leadership so we can continue nurturing community leaders in our networks. So that's like the brief summary of what we discussed about.
Great, thank you. Thanks to your team, really good thinking. And Jill, how about your group?
Sure, we were, I think, group 5, but I didn't really note that when we started. And you know, a lot of the same threads I'm hearing from the others were present in our discussion too, and seeing a lot of the connection between the different topics, and noting that some of us would say, you know, one of these is our core focus, and we use some of the others as, you know, strategies to get there, or anyway, just emphasizing interconnection. And our set that we settled on for number 6 were changing narratives, promoting connectedness, policy, and civic engagement. And a thread that we saw in some ways running through many of these, but that we, you know, think deserves to be kind of lifted up and highlighted on its own is solidarity, and the idea of you know, building bridges between different communities that have experienced you know, different types of oppression, but within the same broad framework, and also learning how to, you know, how to struggle well together in this long-term movement for economic and social change. And I think I'll just add one other observation, is that it came up for me, and I think others, that I'm sort of weighing, you know, would it make sense to join a group that is sort of the core, like the biggest area of our work, or the closest match that I see, or would it make more sense to join a group where there is, that's something that we use, but it's an area where we're trying to develop more, you know? So just kind of weighing whether it makes sense to focus on our core, or sort of a growth edge in what group we select.
Great, thank you. And thanks to the team for all your thoughts. Let's see, Peter. How about
Sure.
you?
So similar to the previous comments, we spent a lot of time looking at kind of the interconnected nature of all of these strategies, and struggling with trying to see where there were differences. And in listening to the conversation, what I took away from it was we were kind of lumping these, rather than coming up with a top 3, it was kind of more of a top 3 categories or sets of strategies, with some of them more naturally falling together, but of course all of them interrelated. So we thought at least the economic, legal, and social policy fit nicely with the strengthening access to economic, legal, and social supports. Again, the creative, protective environments and lessen harms caused by violence and oppression seem to be a natural fit. But even then, those could be added in with others. And then the supporting community-led efforts, nurturing community leaders, improving community conditions through collective action, changing narratives and oppressive social norms, those kind of seem to fit nicely together. So it's more of a top 3 grouping, or sets of groupings. One of the thoughts too, similar to what like Jill just mentioned, was the value in participating in an affinity group that maybe isn't an obvious fit. You know, I mentioned that being a legal aid organization, where I most, you know, naturally would fit in is the strengthening access to legal and economic social supports. But I may gain something that I, you know, by participating in something that's something, changing narratives and oppressive social norms, for example. I might bring some new things to my organization that I, maybe wouldn't have heard of or thought of before. So there's certainly some value in that. One area that we thought maybe was missing, something more generally related to addressing mental health needs and impacts of mental illness. It's something that, again, is something that you could see playing into each of these strategies or having any impact on each of these strategies. And it's something we thought was missing.
Thank you. And great thinking by the group. Thank you so much, group. I think we've got one more group left. Is it Kara?
Yes.
Your name?
Yes. Thanks.
Great.
Yeah, so I think group one, we also talked about the interconnections between a lot of the strategies and potential thematic groupings. I think we talked a little bit about how maybe getting some clarity on possible outcomes for each strategy could help illuminate which ones are very different or could be merged. But given that, we narrowed it down to top 4 of these 9, and so talked about strengthening access to economic, legal, and social supports, improving community conditions through collective action, civic engagement 1, changing narratives, and also create protective environments, knowing that potentially some of these could fit together. And I think just across all of them, talked a lot about the need to be really clear about what we mean when we say community in some of these strategies, knowing that it is a loaded word and different groups and people sometimes mean it differently. So having clarity around that, and also really having clarity on our shared definitions for racial and health equity values and including cultural specificity there. And then talked a bit about the need to also look outside these strategies to not just focus on the work, but see how things are changing in the community and what impact is being made as well. And group, if I missed anything, feel free to chime in.
It sounds like you've got it covered. Thank you, and thanks to your group. So we all had the same conversation, and all the conversations are a little bit different, has a different focus. One of the things, it's the right people at the right time, having the right conversation. And I'm so glad we recorded this. What you shared was very rich. So we'll be able to go back and dissect this and give back to you what we think that you would like to pursue. We'll do a survey at the end. I'm curious, now that you've heard from the other groups, what are new ideas that you heard or new ideas that you noticed? And you can just, just take yourself off mute and share or put it in the chat. What new ideas did you hear? How about, I'm not hearing a response on that. How about themes? Did you hear any themes across all the 5 groups that you'd like to point out? What themes did you hear? Okay.
I feel like I heard this.
The comment, this is Atul Mishra. I can stop. Go ahead.
So Dr. Mishra, please.
The common theme I hear that all of us are excited to give our time and effort to support and help fellow human beings. There's no bigger reward in life that if I can do something which makes a person day, that's all it's about. Now, I told you guys I just started. The day I got fulfilled my desire in my life when a little kid told his mom after falling, less than 3 years of age, in the evening, I want to go and see Dr. Mishra. You cannot give, I cannot give you any better example. That poor child connected with me for the services I provided, and he felt that I've helped. I have multiple stories in my life from past, but I'm not going to tell you no more because that was a different role. But the best thing, the theme I heard, everybody here is excited to help each other and human being to just whatever we can. That's the common theme which I saw. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer, you were going to add something?
Oh, I was just going to say I was inspired by the conversation that it came up in many of your groups about, do I want to have a group that's about what I do in my organization or what our organization does, or is this a stretch or growth opportunity that I can bring back to my organization or to my collective for things? And I thought that was an interesting tension. So thank you. Thank you for highlighting that for us.
Great. Thank you. I want to make room for any other comments.
I will echo what was just said. It was really exciting to see that folks are interested in looking at what are the intersections with the work, because that says that we're not all just looking at a social service model, but looking at people and their entire humanity. So that's really exciting to see among this group of people. I was really interested in my group at the idea of the community-centric fundraising, just because I'm not familiar with it. So it's something I would like to hear and know more about it. But it's good to see that in a way we're all kind of moving towards the same direction with a lot of excitement, and all equally confused, seems like.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Okay, we'll move on to closing up our session for today. I'm going to pass it over to Tegut.
Yeah, thank you, Sherry. Thank you, everybody, for participating in our time here together. So there's a couple of follow-up steps that we just wanted to make you aware of. We will be following up with a survey after we do some digestion of some of the merging of these topic areas and new ideas that you surfaced. We'll need some time to digest that and put it into a survey to get a little bit more feedback from you on level of interest. So you'll have a few days to ponder that for yourselves as well. So please complete that when you receive that from, probably Claire will send that out for us. Please complete that survey when you get it. Do stay in touch with us. This is kind of our meet and greet opportunity with you, but we are available to you, starting now to throughout your time with the foundation. So please do reach out, even if you're not sure if you need evaluation help. Just reach out to us. Let's have a conversation and see what we can do together. Our survey will also include a sign up for that work group that we talked about for civic engagement. That's a part of the foundation's learning of the work across all of your organizations. They're interested in some deeper learning around what does civic engagement look like for folks. So that will also be in the survey. If you're at all interested, please join us for that journey and that co-creation with us on what the story around civic engagement should look like. We would love your feedback there. And I think those are all kind of our parting reminders here. Did I miss anything, team? I think did I get everything? I think so.
Yeah.
Just a quick, oh,
Go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say that if you need to reach out to any of us, you can reach out to me and then I'll connect all of us at once. So Jennifer did put my email. Yep, for any follow-ups or anything that you need, just I'll be the main point of contact and then we'll meet with the entire team afterwards.
Yep, to make it easier for you all, so you're not wrangling all of us
Yes.
individually. Yes, Fani is our fearless leader there.
Yeah.
The only thing I was going to add is that if there's anybody in your organization you think needs to view this recording, or you want to refresh your memory about anything, we'll have within a week we'll have the video posted with the other materials shared today, so you have that for reference as well.
Yeah, thank you. So we're very excited to get to know you in the months to come. So please don't be strangers. I think Sherry's just going to kind of close us out with a quote, just a parting thought. Thank you again for being here today.
Yeah, so I'm not seeing the slide. Is it just me, the last slide?
I just put it up.
Oh, we don't see
Okay.
it. We
Oh,
don't
you
see
don't?
it.
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
oh, no.
It says small group
How about
report
now?
out.
yeah,
Also, you probably didn't see this either. I'm sorry.
right.
Technical difficulties on my end. So
Yeah.
survey, stay in touch, look for
Mhm.
dates to sign up for the work group. And here's the
Yeah,
closing
this is our
meditation.
closing slide. It's our last slide of our time together. We asked ourselves when we thought about you and this time that we were going to be spending today, what do we need to know about the journey that we are all on together with this kickoff session? And so we, from a wisdom deck, we pulled a card. We asked the question, we pulled a card. And so the card said new life. And I'll just read this to you. You have every reason to be optimistic right now as things seem to fall into place magically. New opportunities remind you that abundance is available to you. Delight in the bounty that begins to appear in surprising forms. Stay curious and know that your hopes and dreams are being fulfilled. It's as if new life suddenly infuses your projects, work, and creative ideas with a kind of electricity that crackles with exciting potential. Fortune is smiling on you. And this is by Colette Baron Reed. So, Julie, Julie's clapping. So we wanted to leave you with that. We're very optimistic and we're very excited to be working with you. So personally, I just will close and say I'm just delighted to have spent this time with you today. Team, any other closing comments?
No, thank you so much for being here, sharing of your time.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Gracias. Take care.
Thank you much.
Enjoy the rest of your day.